experience, and today's video is kind of a self-reliant compilation here, and I'm going to call it Winter Time in the Teepee. First I'll explain a little bit or tell you where I get the term this winter, time in the teepee. What does that mean? Back around 2002 or around 2002, I had the opportunity to move to the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I had several Lakota mentors, elders who were mentors. One lady in particular who told me this saying. She noticed I was having a little bit of a hard time in the winter. I had been an airline pilot and I hurt my back, and that was in about 3 years before this time. And it was still a little bit hard during the winter time. You know, they're in cold climates. A lot of times when it's cold and dark and windy, there's not a lot to do, and so you kind of get a little, I would get a little bit antsy. And she said, you know, Kevin, winter time, the Lakota, they called it time in the teepee. And it was a time when the people would repair tools that they maybe needed some repair. They would make and fletch their arrows, and they would work on projects. Of course, they would sleep. They would go out and do some short hunting trips, but the winter, they called it, the Lakota called it the time in the teepee. And I mentioned this a little bit, that word, that phrase, in my permaculture design commentary video that I just put out. And my reference to that is that permaculture people, we kind of look out at the world and we see what's going on, and permaculture is in response to what's going on in the world. Why are we doing permaculture? Well, at first it started out with just looking at peak oil, and that's where it first came from. Things are going to get more expensive to transport. For every bit of food that we eat, on average, it takes, for 1 calorie, it takes 10 calories of oil to bring it to our table. So that is definitely not sustainable. Imagine if we went out into our garden and we had to work, and we worked 10 calories to gain 1. It wouldn't be very long before we would be dead. So to be sustainable, we have to use less than 1 calorie to eat 1 calorie. And in native cultures, when they would go gather, the average is about 10 hours, 15 hours a week. 60% of the village worked maybe 15 hours a week to provide the food that they needed. So that is truly sustainable. Permaculture, we believe, we see with peak oil, with the amount of oil that's being used up and all of the things that are happening, that we need to be more self-reliant. We need to be able to take care of ourselves a little bit more. So in addition to gardening, so I live in as far north as Anchorage, Alaska, I can't really do any gardening. We listen to what David Holmgren says, and we look at these peak oil curve, and we're coming over the peak oil curve now, and what's going to happen is resources are going to get more and more scarce, and things are going to happen where we're going to have to provide more for ourselves. So if we can start to learn these things now, maybe it's not going to happen next month, maybe it's not going to happen next year, maybe it's not going to happen for 20 years, but if we know how to do it, then we can pass these skills and these desires on to our children. My kids love it. They think it's great. So, what does that have to do? During the winter time, I like to have lots of projects, just things to do, try new things. It's mostly about trying new things, and they're trying new things that are something that can be sustainable. How many of you have made an apple pie? You peel the apples, you take the core out, and then, okay, if we have some animals, we can feed it to the animals. But otherwise, it goes to the compost. It's not totally wasted, but what if we could do something with that? So I've been learning about how to make apple cider vinegar. And we take our apple peels and the apple core, we chop them up a little bit, put them in a jar, leave it sit there for a few hours, they get brown. It's basically the yeast and the bacteria are starting to work on those apples. Then we cover that jar, we fill it with water, put a cheesecloth on the top, and put it someplace warm for about 6 weeks. And we get apple cider vinegar. Then we get what's called mother of cider. It's a kind of a yeasty, they call it mother of cider, is what they call it. And it's a layer that's going to form in there. And next time when I make my apple cider vinegar, I keep that, so when I'm ready, I'll have all my cores and everything ready. I'll strain out my apple cider vinegar. Then I'll have my mother of cider, and I'll put it in the next mother of vinegar. I'll put it in the next jar, and it'll ferment faster, so it won't have to take 6 weeks next time. So we're going to go into the kitchen in a few minutes, and I'm going to just show you a little bit about what I'm talking about, so it's not just a talking head video. Then another thing I found and I'm really excited about, and it's really so good, is ginger beer plant. And from what I gather, back in the 1800s, somehow it came to England, and it was very popular. It's like a yeast growth, and it's they're like little grains, small grains. And I bought it, the ginger beer plant, and then all I do is I put it into a big jar, put about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of sugar, water, I grate up some ginger, I put it in there, and then I leave it for a week. Then I bought a case of Grolsch beer a while back, and I have all of the bottles, so the nice flip-top bottles. I'll take my ginger beer, I put it in these in the bottles, let it sit out on the counter for about a day or two, and then it ferments a little bit. There's a little bit of alcohol in there, but it's not enough that you feel it, and I actually let my kids drink it as well. And it's so good. It's a living plant. Another one that I bought, it's water Kefir, and maybe people are maybe a little bit more familiar with milk Kefir. I don't drink a lot of milk, but with the water Kefir you can use dried and fresh fruits and fruit juices after you ferment it with a little bit of sugar. This one only takes 3 days. My boys and we really like lemonade, so at the end I take some organic lemon juice that I buy in a jar, and I put some in, let it sit on the counter again for 2 more days in my flip-top bottles, and then into the refrigerator, and it's so good. It's a living treat, just like the ginger candy that I made that other video for. So another one that I'm gonna try is malt vinegar, and you take a couple of beers, pour it in a jar, let it sit for a day with the top off, and you'll get some yeast and bacteria that naturally occurs in the air. It'll fall down in there. We put it paper towel with the rubber band on top in someplace warm. So our vinegars are going to go, I have a cabinet above the refrigerator, and it's quite warm up there, and they're going to go in there for about 6 weeks. I don't go up there very often, so it stays nice and dark. I can go up there, it's easy to get to. Maybe you have a water heater that keeps warm in a dark corner somewhere. You can put it over the water heater. So don't be afraid to just go out and, I hate to use the word Google, do a web search. Go out and search ginger beer plant, water kefir, ginger candy, apple cider vinegar recipe. Just these simple search terms, and you'll come up with so many things. Well, first I actually, it was an afterthought for me to make the pie, because then I realized I was going to have so much apple left over. So then I found a recipe for apple pie. So the idea really was for me was to make the apple cider. But you can see apple cider vinegar, sorry. So you see it's a jar, it's usually a flip top jar that can seal up, but we don't want it to seal up. So I have this muslin top here with some elastic in it, and I'll put it over the top. But you can see I'm going to get a nice Dutch Pennsylvania apple pie afterwards. This is my fermenting cabinet here. This is my ginger ginger beer plant, and it's ready to put in some bottles today. My certificate of adoption. If you can read that, you can see the website of where I found it. And this is my water kefir. The one place that I bought it from, she said that the water kefir, they like banana. So I get some organic bananas that I normally eat anyways, and slice up 1 or 2 inches piece, into thin strips, and then they sit in here. The color is quite dark on my ginger beer. Today I used organic dark sugar, raw sugar, so it's quite dark. They say it's okay to do that with the ginger likes that, and you can see, I'll come in here close, and it's really fine grains. It almost doesn't, it looks like it's a yeast, but they are in grains. If we come over here to the water kefir, you can see they're quite big grains in there, and they're a living organism, and they're converting the sugars from just a regular old sugar into a more usable sugar that our body likes better. And but that's it. I hope you guys, I just pique your curiosity, and that you decide that you want to do some of these things and practice. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next video.